Alrighty, folks. My name is Mr. Kaufman. I'll be your instructor for this hybrid course. And I just wanted to start off with a short little kind of mini lecture on the introductory material. I'm going to be going through the questions that I posted in the Lesson 1 study guide. I'm going to do this video in two segments. So one covering just what economics is and the key ideas and concepts. And then I'll post a second video later on where I cover the scientific method and some of those other concepts you see there. So if you want to follow along and jot some notes, see how, if you filled this out before watching this video from either just your own, previous knowledge or reading the textbook, see, how well you did. But if you didn't, that's okay. That's what this video is for. So the first thing to discuss is just what economics is. And I like to define economics simply as a social science that studies how people, firms, and industries and societies make optimal choices under conditions of scarcity. So let's pick that apart a little bit. As a social science, that means we're studying people. And so other examples of social sciences would be, government, political science, history, sociology, anthropology, psychology, philosophy, human geography. All of these things have in common, people. We're studying different things about people. In particular, in economics, we're studying how people make choices. And the reason we make choices is due to what we call scarcity. We'll come back to that idea in just a moment when we get to the key concepts. But within economics, we divide it into two broad fields, microeconomics, which is what we'll be studying in this course, and macroeconomics. And the way to tell the difference between the two is just that slight difference in spelling, micro with an I, macro with an A. In microeconomics, you can think of that I standing for individual. And so that means we're talking about individual people, that's you and me, individual firms, individual businesses, or individual industries. And an industry is just a group of firms or companies that are doing basically the same thing. And so you can think of microeconomics as the study of markets, individual markets. So how do we as consumers interact with companies that are out there producing goods and services? So that's all things. Those are all things that we'd study in microeconomics. In macroeconomics, with that letter A, you can think of that as standing for aggregate. And aggregate just means adding everything up, right? So we're not talking about one person, one firm, one industry. We're talking about all people, all firms, all industries. So it's really big picture. And a useful analogy is, imagine picking up a handful of sand, and you can look at all the little bits of sand in your hand and kind of describe them and see how they look. That's like studying microeconomics, right? People and businesses, firms are all the little bitty nitty-gritty parts of the entire economy. Whereas macroeconomics would be if you set that that handful of sand down and then looked all around you, and what would you see? Well, you'd see the beach. And so you would describe what you see, what is a beach, how does it work? You'd have ways of describing the beach that's made up of sand, but then you're going to have different ways of describing the sand itself. And so that's the same kind of thing we're doing in economics between micro and macroeconomics. So the key terms and concepts. So the first one is scarcity. And the simplest way to think of scarcity is a lack of resources. All right. Now, why does that matter? Well, again, we said that economics we're studying choices. Well, we're confronted with scarcity. That means we lack the resources to produce the things that we want, to get the things that we want. And so we're going to have to figure out how we're going to make the best use of those resources that are limited, that are scarce, to achieve as many of the things that we want, to satisfy as many of our wants and needs and desires. So you can think of economics as how do we satisfy unlimited wants with limited resources, all right? And so scarcity is going to be what forces us to make choices. Now, anytime we make a choice, we're going to have to accept that there's an opportunity cost. And an opportunity cost you can think of as the next best thing, or the next best highest valued alternative, or a trade-off. Essentially, it's what are you giving up to get something else, all right? So for example, when you wake up in the morning and the alarm goes off, You can either get up or you can reach over and hit the snooze and sleep for 10 more minutes. All right. Well, if you choose to hit the snooze button, what are you giving up? Well, you're giving up those 10 minutes that could have been spent, eating breakfast, getting dressed, taking a shower, going for a jog, whatever. All right. On the other hand, if you decide to get up, what are you giving up? You're giving up that extra 10 minutes of sleep. Okay. So anytime you make a choice, what's the next best thing you could have done? That's what we call the opportunity cost. Now, the next concept I've got listed for y'all is this idea of rational self-interest. And so there's two parts to this. Rational just means logical, right? We're not making decisions randomly. We're not flipping a coin. We're not doing things willy-nilly. There's some logical, rational reasoning thought process going on behind our choices. Now, this idea of self-interest, it sounds kind of like selfishness, but it's not quite the same thing. Selfishness implies that you are making a decision that benefits you, but may actually, come at the expense of somebody else. When we talk about self-interest, we just mean simply that people, firms, societies make choices that are going to benefit them. Okay, Adam Smith, you may have heard of him. He was from Scotland. He's kind of who we refer to as the founder of modern economics. He noted this in a book he wrote, you may have heard of, called The Wealth of Nations, back in 1776. And the observation he made was that it's not from the goodness of their hearts that the butcher, the baker, the brewer provide us with the things that we need to eat our dinner. It's because they are acting in their own rational self-interest. Now, does that mean they're jerks and they don't care about us? No. It just means that they're going to sell us the bread, the meat, so that we can eat, so that they can get paid to go out and buy the things that they want to buy. Right? So it's perfectly rational for them to provide those things to us. We benefit by eating the dinner. They benefit by earning an income and going out and purchasing the things that they want. And so that's what that idea of rational self-interest is. And we believe that pretty much everybody, a person, a firm, a society, is acting in their own rational self-interest. And they're acting in pursuit of some goal. And so when we watch people making decisions and choices, we assume that they are, or we describe their behavior as purposeful, which means as they're making these decisions, there's something that they're after, right? They're not just doing something for the fun of it. They're in pursuit of something. Now, if it's a person, you or me, we say that we act in our own rational self-interest in order to maximize our personal utility. And utility is just another word for happiness. So we make choices as individuals that are going to make us better off, that are going to make us happier. Okay? It may not be that it happens in that exact moment. Maybe it's something that's going to make us happier in the future. All right? Now, a firm, we're going to assume, is making choices that lead to more profit. Profit, we just measure it in dollars and cents. And we can pretty objectively analyze, how a firm goes about maximizing profit. And individuals, on the other hand, how do you measure happiness, right? Do you put electrodes in the brain, or do you measure, chemicals in the brain or something to measure that warm, fuzzy feeling? No, it's we're not there yet. Maybe someday science will figure it out. So when it comes to, measuring individual choices and measuring happiness, it's a little bit more difficult than it is with firms, measuring profit. Now, for entire societies, so all the people, all the firms, what do we think that a society is after? Well, we're going to assume that when people come together and make collective choices, that they are simply trying to maximize the social welfare, which is just another word for, overall well-being of all the people in the society. So society is going to make choices that allow people to maximize their utility. They're going to make choices that allow firms to maximize their profits. And hopefully that's going to lead to better well-being for everybody. Now, the last two concepts I'll discuss for now have to do with the actual decision-making process. So there's two forms of analysis that we assume economic agents, people, firms, societies, these two forms of analysis that we assume is going on inside, their noggins. So with cost-benefit analysis, all we're doing is just weighing the pros and the cons of any option, of any choice that we make. So for example, I set a plate of cookies down in front of you, and there's 10 cookies, and these are big cookies. and your option is to eat all 10 cookies or eat 0 cookies. All right. So how do you decide whether to eat all the cookies or eat 0 cookies? Well, what would happen if I ate all 10 cookies? Well, on the one hand, I'm really hungry, I really like cookies, and so it'd be really satisfying to eat some cookies. All right. On the other hand, eating 10 cookies, and again, these are great big cookies, might make me sick, right? And obviously, that's a lot of sugar and fat and calories that I don't necessarily need. Okay, so there's some pros and there's cons to eating all 10 cookies. Now, on the other hand, if I choose not to eat all 10 cookies, right? The benefit is I'm not going to get sick to my stomach. I'm not going to eat all of that junk food, right? But the downside is, well, I like cookies, and now I'm not eating cookies. And on top of that, I'm still hungry, right? So there's some pros and cons to not eating the cookies. Now, every person, right? So if I gave each of you a plate of cookies, some of you will choose to eat the cookies because you believe the benefit outweighs the cost. Others of us might choose not to eat all 10 cookies because the cost outweighs the benefit. Right? So we're going to weigh the cost, weigh the benefit, and we're going to choose whichever option we get the most out of, right? Wherever we get more benefit than a cost. Now, the last thing we'll discuss in this video is this idea of marginal analysis. Now, when you eat cookies, you probably don't sit there and say, I'm going to eat all 10 cookies, right? You look at the plate of cookies and you pick up the first cookie, right? Oh, hey, look, I've got a cookie. So what we think is going to go in my brain then is I'm going to weigh the cost and the benefit of that first cookie, okay? And with one cookie, the benefit's pretty good. I'm hungry. It tastes good. The cost, relatively low, right? One cookie's not going to kill me or make me sick. So I've got a high, what we call marginal benefit, and a relatively low marginal cost of that first cookie. So it's going to benefit me to eat the first cookie. Now after I eat the first cookie, I've got to decide, am I going to eat the second cookie? And now that second cookie becomes the marginal cookie. And I have to weigh the cost and the benefit, the marginal cost, the marginal benefit of that second cookie. And hopefully the benefit will outweigh the cost and I'll eat the second cookie. And I'm going to continue eating one more cookie until I get to a point where the cost of eating that next cookie outweighs the benefit. Maybe that's the cookie where maybe the 8th or 9th cookie is where now I start to feel full and I start to feel sick and I've got all that sugar in me and it's no longer satisfying to eat that next cookie. So when we mean marginal analysis, what we mean is that we're weighing the cost and the benefits, but we're doing it just one step at a time. Marginal you can think of as additional or incremental, right? So we take larger decisions and we break them up into kind of baby steps, right? And so we're doing that cost-benefit analysis and marginal analysis at the same time in pursuit of, our utility, our profit, our welfare. We're making these choices that benefit us, are in our self-interest, recognizing that if I choose, to eat that cookie, what's the opportunity cost, right? Or if I choose not to eat the cookie, what's the next best thing I could have done? If I walk into McDonald's and I look at the dollar menu and I have $1, I can pick one thing on the menu, which means there's nothing else I can get on the menu. Well, whatever the next best thing I could have done with that dollar, if I get a cheeseburger instead of getting fries, well, that fries is the opportunity cost. But we're going to assume that I did the cost-benefit analysis and I determined that it was in my rational self-interest to eat that cheeseburger rather than the French fries. It would be in my rational self-interest to eat the 7th cookie, but not the 8th cookie. All right? And again, why are we having to do this? Scarcity. And we'll talk more about resources in general. If you think about the choices that you make as an individual, a lot of the times what's scarce is time and money, right? There's not enough time, there's not enough money to do everything we want. So a lot of the choices that we make on a daily basis are about figuring out how to spend our time and money in a way that provides us with the most happiness. And so at this point, I'll stop. And if you haven't already, take a look at the discussion board. There's a forum on there called Making Choices. And so just read the description. I've got my first option up there, or my first little scenario. And so look over that, and that'll be the first participation exercise. And if you have questions, shoot me an email, and stay tuned for video 2.